In a world that often equates leadership with volume, visibility, and overt dominance, there exists a different kind of leader who operates in quiet counterpoint to conventional wisdom. The Sigma male represents a paradox in leadership theory, a man who influences profoundly without seeking followers, who shapes outcomes without commanding attention, who leads without appearing to lead at all. Today, we're exploring the sophisticated mechanics of silent leadership, how Sigma males exercise influence without domination, and why this approach often achieves what loud leadership cannot. 1. The power of the quiet example. Conventional leadership relies heavily on verbal direction, setting visions, giving orders, motivating through speeches. The Sigma male practices a different form of leadership through example. He understands that people are more influenced by consistent action than inspiring words, by demonstrated competence than charismatic promises. This leadership through example operates on multiple levels. In professional settings, he becomes the standard of excellence, not by proclaiming standards, but by embodying them. In personal relationships, he demonstrates integrity, not by preaching about it, but by living it consistently. In social contexts, he shows emotional intelligence, not by explaining it, but by practicing it. The psychological mechanism here is powerful. Observational learning. Humans are wired to learn from observing others, especially those who demonstrate competence without seeking recognition for it. The Sigma male's quiet excellence becomes a gravitational pull that attracts those seeking genuine competence rather than performative leadership. 2. The strategic use of selective silence. While conventional leaders often believe they must have an opinion on everything and express it frequently, the Sigma male understands the strategic power of selective silence. His quietness isn't absence of thought, but conservation of influence. In meetings, his silence creates space for others to speak, often drawing out perspectives that dominant personalities would overshadow. In conflicts, his refusal to engage in reactive arguments often de-escalates tensions. In decision-making contexts, his quiet observation allows him to understand dynamics more deeply before contributing. This selective silence creates what psychologists call the expectation of substance. When someone speaks rarely, people tend to listen more carefully when they do speak. The Sigma male's words carry disproportionate weight precisely because they're not diluted by constant commentary. His silence becomes a canvas upon which his occasional words are painted more vividly. 3. Influence through intellectual contribution rather than social dominance. Alpha-style leadership operates on social dominance hierarchies, establishing position, commanding respect through presence, leading through force of personality. Sigma leadership operates on intellectual contribution hierarchies, establishing value through insight, commanding respect through competence, leading through substance. The Sigma male influences by consistently contributing the most insightful analysis, the most innovative solutions, the most thoughtful perspectives. People begin to listen to him not because he demands their attention, but because they've learned his contributions are valuable. His leadership is earned through demonstrated capability rather than claimed through social positioning. This approach creates a different kind of authority, one based on respect rather than fear, on substance rather than style. People follow his lead not because they have to, but because they've come to trust that his direction is thoughtful and his insights are valuable. 4. Creating psychological safety through non-judgmental presence. One of the most powerful but least recognized forms of leadership is creating environments where others can do their best work. The Sigma male excels at this through his non-judgmental, non-reactive presence. Because he isn't constantly evaluating others for social hierarchy positioning or seeking to dominate interactions, people feel psychologically safe around him. They're more likely to share unconventional ideas, admit uncertainties, and take creative risks. This psychological safety fosters innovation and authentic collaboration in ways that more dominant leadership styles often suppress. His quiet, accepting presence creates what organizational psychologists call a holding environment, a space where people feel secure enough to engage in the vulnerable work of growth, learning, and innovation. This is leadership of the highest order, creating conditions for excellence rather than demanding it through pressure. 5. The art of the strategic question. While dominant leaders often provide answers, the Sigma male practices the art of the strategic question. His influence often comes not from telling people what to think, but from asking questions that help them think more clearly. These questions aren't random or casual. They're precisely targeted to illuminate blind spots, challenge assumptions, or connect disparate pieces of information. A well-timed question from a Sigma male can shift an entire group's perspective without him ever stating his own position. This questioning approach creates ownership in others. When people arrive at insights through their own thinking, guided by thoughtful questions, they're more committed to those insights than if they were simply told what to think. The Sigma male leads people to discover solutions themselves rather than imposing solutions upon them. 6. Influence through reliability and consistency. In a world of unpredictable emotions and shifting priorities, the Sigma male's remarkable consistency becomes a form of leadership in itself. His reliability creates a foundation upon which others can build. People learn they can count on him to follow through on commitments, to maintain consistent standards, to apply the same thoughtful approach regardless of circumstances. This reliability becomes a stabilizing force in groups and organizations, reducing uncertainty and creating predictability. This form of leadership is particularly powerful in chaotic or rapidly changing environments. While others react emotionally to every shift, the Sigma male's steady presence provides an anchor. People naturally begin to orient themselves around his consistent example, not because he tells them to, but because his steadiness provides valuable orientation in uncertainty. 7. Leading through boundary setting. Conventional leadership often focuses on what people should do. Sigma leadership often focuses on what won't be done, the boundaries that create space for excellence. The Sigma male leads by example in setting clear boundaries. Boundaries around his time, his energy, his ethical standards. This boundary setting demonstrates self-respect and establishes implicit standards for how he expects to be treated and what environments he considers acceptable. Others observe these boundaries and often begin to establish healthier boundaries for themselves. His refusal to tolerate disrespectful treatment, unreasonable demands, or ethical compromises demonstrates that such standards are possible and worthwhile. This form of leadership doesn't demand that others change, but creates conditions where change becomes desirable and achievable. 8. The subtle art of redirecting momentum. Perhaps the most sophisticated form of Sigma leadership is the subtle redirection of momentum without overt intervention. Rather than standing in front of a moving group shouting, "Stop, go this way," he positions himself slightly to the side and asks questions or makes observations that cause the group to reconsider its direction. This might involve highlighting unnoticed data, asking about unintended consequences, or quietly demonstrating an alternative approach that proves more effective. The redirection happens so organically that the group often feels they discovered the new direction themselves. This approach preserves group autonomy while preventing harmful trajectories. It's leadership that respects others' intelligence and agency while still providing guidance. The Sigma male's approach to influence represents what might be called stewardship leadership. Leadership focused not on personal power or recognition, but on nurturing the best outcomes, the highest standards, and the most authentic collaboration. His silent leadership works because it operates at a deeper psychological level than dominant leadership. It influences through respect rather than fear, through substance rather than style, through empowerment rather than control. In a world increasingly skeptical of loud authority and performative leadership, the Sigma male's quiet approach represents something both ancient and urgently modern. The understanding that true leadership isn't about being followed, but about creating conditions where people can find their own way forward with clarity, integrity, and purpose. His greatest leadership lesson may be this: sometimes the most powerful way to lead is to create spaces where leadership becomes unnecessary, where people are so empowered, so clear, and so capable that they lead themselves toward excellence. If you want to understand more about how Sigma males exercise influence in professional environments, I recommend watching our video.